Mark Riker still on?
He is, yeah.
No, someone stuffs that.
Wait, one more minute. But I'm ready.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Auburn study session for February 13th, 2023. Call this meeting to order. This evening's meeting is being held both virtually and in person. Sean, will you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor J. Raj,
I'm here.
Councilmember Baggett,
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Here?
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Malinga,
Here.
Councilmember Rakes,
Here.
Councilmember Trot Manuel.
Here.
Thank you, Sean. This evening, the City Council will adjourn to an executive session per RCW 42.56.110(1)(I) to discuss litigation or legal risks of a proposed action or current practice that the agency has identified when public discussion of the litigation or legal risk is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency for 30 minutes. City Council, the City Attorney Como, Specially Appointed Legal Counsel Charlotte Archer, Director Martinson, and Deputy City Attorney Boucher will be required to attend. There is no anticipated action after the executive session, so we should be back by 6:01. We will now adjourn to the executive meeting. I'm always Welcome back, and the meeting is back in order. I see we have reports and presentation and the announcements report and presentation section. First, we have an update from the Police Advisory Committee. It will be presented by Chief Collier.
So I'm actually going to turn this over to Josh Zumstad. He's one of our members from the committee.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Josh.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. So I'm just going to start off and kind of talk about some of the things that we've been discussing on the PAC and some of my experience as being a part of it. Since joining the PAC, I had an opportunity to do a ride-along back in 2022. I took part in the Auburn Police Citizens Academy, and Mayor Backus, she came in and was there, and I got a chance to do a ride-along. And being on the ride-along provided a unique experience for me and helped have a greater appreciation for some of the challenges that our officers face on the streets here in Auburn. And one of my takeaways from that is to have a greater emphasis on community policing. It has a profound impact on the perception of the police department and helps to deter crime and serves as a way to stay engaged with the community. So having officers on the streets, having them engage back and forth with the citizens is something that we feel it's important. Which leads me to my second section, and that's about the perception of safety. Some of the issues within the Police Advisory Committee that we've been talking about is there's a feeling of people in the community feeling unsafe. So we're wanting to address, well, why is it that people in the community feel unsafe? With recent changes to state law as a result of the Blake decision, citizens have continued to feel unsafe and feel as if that the police hands are tied and that they're not able to support and defend members of the community. It's been mentioned, members of the community are oftentimes taking matters into their own hands, and vigilantism is a real thing, right? So being able to address this and understand the perspective of what the community members are saying that are part of the PAC. I've been, on the PAC for 2 years and developed great friendships and bonds with the people, from all political stripes in the community, come from various backgrounds. I'm a military veteran, worked for the FAA, and, and having Rachel Diaz here to help support us, we come from different backgrounds, different points of view, and we collectively want to solve problems, right? And so engaging with Chief and Commander Adams on the PAC has given us an opportunity to share the sentiments of what the community is saying in the representative groups that we represent on the PAC. So in some of the initiatives that we're talking, that we'd like to see happen is to assist with improving the perceptions of opinions of those in the community. Some suggestions are having the police call takers ask the question if they would like to have the police officers actually come out and respond to the call, right? So have that police call taker ask the question, would you like an officer to respond? If you call 911 now, they're going to say, would you like an officer to call you? Well, how might we ask them, would you like the police to actually come out and talk to you? So that's one way that we can improve the engagement with the police and the citizens of the community. So community engagement. There's a text to 911 campaign that's available here in Auburn and King County. So one of the suggestions that we're proposing is in like the Auburn magazine, for example, do a media blitz to talk about the text to 911 campaign and put it out there in the community for people to be aware of. You could do a local ad in the Auburn Reporter as another example. Just communicate that out to the public. Let them know if they're in a crisis or in an emergency that they can text 911 from their phone. And something else the PAC has played an active role in is helping to develop the recruitment website for the police department. Myself and another member of the PAC work very closely with Commander Adams to have representative photos of people in Auburn and a diverse makeup of the police department on that website. So I want to say thank you to the council for helping us with one of the incentives for recruitment, and that being take-home vehicles, right? being out there and listening to what the needs are and some of the challenges that the recruiters have faced within the police department as it came to take-home vehicles, it now puts us in line with some of our other partners around the valley as an incentive to try to attract more officers. So I want to say thank you on behalf of the PAC for your efforts among that. And some of the challenges that we see facing the community, with the upcoming trial of Officer Nelson, making sure that the community is prepared, that the city is prepared for whatever that reaction may be. Having officers out in the streets, engaging with the public, that's going to be important. And to make sure that our streets are safe. Right? Some of the other challenges in this, Auburn is no specific, is the rise of fentanyl and criminal activity in the city. Right? What are we doing to try to address that? We know in the city of Auburn, if an officer has multiple encounters with the same person, they could take action. But currently, there's no means to track that across the valley. So if there's an interaction in Kent and an interaction in Auburn, there's no way for that data to be shared. So collectively, with the city and our partners in the valley, to come to a comprehensive solution to be able to track who these folks are, give them the treatment that they need, but if they reoffend, hold them accountable. So, some of the other initiatives that we've taken a part of is Spider Tech, helping to engage and send out that information to the community after there's an interaction with the police. It's proving to be valuable, and we've heard great feedback from members in the community. So, those are just several of the opportunities and takeaways from my couple of years that I've been on the advisory committee, and I appreciate Chief's leadership and helping to make this a reality, right? So thank you for hearing my thoughts, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Kate Baldwin.
What is the URL for the recruitment website? I would love to see that.
It's www.teamapd.com.
Any other questions, Council? Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we have the end-of-year capital project status report by Director Gao.
Yes, thank you, and I'm gonna hand it over to Matt Larson, who is our senior project engineer, who's gonna go over that briefing with you.
Matt?
Hello. All right. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share what we did in 2022 and what we're looking forward to in this coming year. And so I'm Matt Larson. I'm Senior Project Engineer in the Public Works Department. So in 2022, as this slide shows, we preserved or reconstructed approximately 7.5 lane miles of pavement, installed nearly 9,000 linear feet of sidewalk, upgraded 11 curb ramps to meet the ADA compliance requirements, enhanced 2 pedestrian crossings by installing RFB, which is the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and installed 1 school zone flashing beacon. We've replaced over 16,500 linear feet of water main. We placed 68 deduct water meters with irrigation meters. We've complete replacement of water pump station facility, replaced nearly 6,700 linear feet of stormwater conveyance pipe and 4,000 linear feet of sanitary sewer pipe. Just kind of the general overview of some of the things that are the stats of it, right? I did want to highlight, I would love to talk about every single project that we worked on, over the year, but we don't have time for that. So I did just want to highlight few projects that we are nearing completion, basically complete. This first one is the Academy Pump Station project. If you would like to, you could go to the CPS report that was included in the packet. It's on page 1, but basically this one is full pump station replacement. The operational and testing of the site is now complete.
Is this by the Lincoln Chute?
Yes, this is on the plateau.
Okay, good.
The pump station is online, and really the last sort of thing, actually, I just got an update today. They had a little bit of site cleanup work to do up there, and the contractor's gonna request final inspection, so we expect to have final inspection this week, and this one should be wrapping up. So we're really excited for this. I know the water department's excited about this pump station as well, so. And so these pictures here just show sort of the interior shot of the pump station and sort of the new building. All right, the next project I wanted to highlight, this is the 2nd Street Southeast Preservation. This one is just south of the Safeway.
Okay.
So between A Street and Auburn Way.
Oh, okay. The Spunky Monkey and
Yes. Yeah, between the roadway between Spunky Monkey and Safeway. Yep. So this one undergrounded the aerial utility lines. As you can see in the photo on the left, shows the before picture, and then the photo on the right shows the after. So we undergrounded the utilities, full roadway reconstruction, street lighting improvements. You can see the street lights with the downtown decorative standard, as this is in the downtown core. And as of right now, this is mostly complete. The photo was taken about a week ago, and the pole here in the middle is now gone, and the contractor has done the vast majority of the concrete restoration work. There's a couple little things that we still have to do before we can do final inspection, but very, very close to be done with this project. And you can see in the picture, the roadway was in pretty sad shape, so we're really excited that we're able to get this one complete. Our 4th Street Southeast Preservation Project. This is 4th Street from Auburn Way to M Street, southeast. This roadway was also in very, very poor condition. This full reconstruction of the roadway. We had water improvements, sewer improvements. We replaced sections of the sidewalk. We had street lighting improvements. We also had an enhanced crosswalk here as well. This one is mostly complete with the exception of some the roadway channelization and some minor cleanup work throughout the site. You can see in the picture that they still have the temporary striping. We have to wait until warmer, drier weather before we can do the final striping out here. Okay. So those are the 3 that I wanted to highlight as far as what we completed last year. So as we move through the year, you may ask yourself how to stay informed with the projects that are going on. There's several ways. First one would be these meetings. Myself or my colleague Jeff Bender, who's another senior project engineer, will be presenting quarterly to council and providing an update similar to this. We also send out monthly capital project status reports. I included one in the packet. Looks like this. For those of you who may not be familiar with this, it's pretty high level information, provides the project number, the project name, a little bit of a description of what's going on in the project, high level budget, when we anticipate starting and completing construction work, and then some kind of recent progress that we've made recently. So we update this constantly. So all this information is actually put into our GIS system, and you can access any project, any active project at any time through the city's webpage in the interactive capital projects mapping tool as well. The screenshot on the slide there shows an example, and basically all the information that's in the capital project report is also in that website as well. And then you can access that website. There's a link in here, but it's also probably easier just to navigate from the city's website, go to Public Works page, and then there's a link on the Public Works page. On the capital project page. Another little piece of information that is helpful is traffic advisories. We also have a interactive map for those projects that or those traffic impacts that are significant. So the example of this one is our Riverwalk closure, which is occurring right now for a capital project, and then it also has access to some of the traffic cameras as well. So. All right, so currently we have 31 capital projects that are currently active, valued at approximately $87 million. 24 of those are in the design phase, 7 are the construction phase. Kind of makes sense that we're in the winter time. There's less in construction than more in design. One point of note is we do have a handful of projects that we do intend on moving into the design phase once we are able to hire our new project engineer position that was added at this the 2023 budget. All right, so I wanted to highlight, similar to the projects that we completed last year, I wanted to highlight a few projects that we're moving into the construction phase this year, things to look forward to. One of the big ones is on page 4 of the CPS report. It's highlighted, it's the blue highlight area on the map there. This is the Coal Creek Springs Transmission Main Replacement Project, CP 1603. This one replaces a 100-year-old water main. It builds a utility and pedestrian bridge over the White River. So the new water main is going to span over the river as opposed to going under, which is the current old water main path. What's nice about this one is we do replace the water main, but it also makes a pedestrian connection between Game Farm Park and the Game Farm Wilderness Park. We're excited about this project, and we are anticipating this one. We are finalizing environmental and land use permits. As you can imagine, it has quite a few permitting hurdles, and we anticipate breaking ground as early as June of this year. Next project I wanted to highlight, 8th Street Loop. This one, a little bit more difficult to see, but it's the blue highlighted here, smaller on the screen there. This one's on page 8 of the CPS report. This project will create a new one-way eastbound connection between A Street and Division Street and A Street Southeast. So if you're familiar with the area, Division here, this is where we had King County had their community gardens in this area, has recently been removed. And so the picture here shows the vegetation there that will be removed where the new connection will be made, generally. This one, we are finalizing the design, and we're working with WSDOT, because this is a federally funded project, to get complete all the hurdles associated with federal funds, and we are anticipating Currently, it's scheduled for to start construction in the third quarter, but we are optimistic that it may actually be May or June this year where we can break ground on this project. This one will also be highlighted in the Auburn Magazine feature article this spring. Then the last project I wanted to highlight, this is the runway taxiway improvements and RSA grading. So the RSA stands for the Runway Safety Area Grading Project. This is on page 11 of the CPS report. This one upgrades the taxiway and runway lighting, extends the runway safety area at the south end, associated with the runway extension that we did a few years back. And then it also preserves the existing runway and taxiway pavement. This one, the roadway safety area incorporates property acquisition from the King County Metro park and ride lot that we purchased some property for them in order to make this safety area. And we anticipate breaking ground in July. We do have some, this is Federal Aviation Administration funds on this project, and so there's certain hurdles that we have for that. So we anticipate clearing all those by February, or sorry, January. Sorry, July, breaking ground in July. All right. I know there's a lot of information. I probably spoke a little too fast, but is there any questions?
I had.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. On page, the one where you're gonna work under the, work over the road, is that tribal land?
On which?
On the project, what is it, 1603?
Oh, 1603. So the Cold Creek Springs water main.
Yeah.
That is not tribal land. It is park property. Parks part of the Game Farm Park. There's also we're utilizing an existing water utility easement that was there for the existing water main.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, Council? Councilmember Kate Baldwin.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm really excited about the improvements on 4th Street. I've crossed over there heading from my house out to the community center, and the new sidewalk bulbs, I think they're called, are really helpful, and I think that's going to do a lot to help with pedestrian safety getting through the neighborhoods over to our resources like the farmers market, community center, and those types of places. So that's really going to open up people walking or biking or getting from our neighborhoods over to that part of the community. So just really excited to see that right around the corner.
Any other questions, Council? Councilmember Kate Baldwin.
Also, I am excited about the improvements at the pump station, the Academy pump station. I was wondering if you could maybe translate what that means to our homeowners when our pumps are working well in the city.
Well,
Are we keeping water out of their basements better?
so the pump station project is a water distribution project. So drinking water. So it's not stormwater related. It's basically drinking water and distributing it to our customers. So nothing to do with basement flooding, those kinds of things. This is mostly just making sure that we have the capacity for future developments, and then also a maintainable system that the old pump station was old and beyond its useful life, so we had to replace it. But in the same time, we upgrade it to make sure that we meet current and future demands as well. So a very important project for our water department for sure.
And did that one include retrofitting for earthquakes?
Actually, we did a seismic control valve project prior to this this project. But the building itself meets all current building permit standards.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council? If not, thank you very much. Are you going to be doing the next one too?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Finally, we have the engineering design standards also by Director Go.
Yes, and I'm actually going to pass this over to Jacob Sweeting, who is our Assistant Director, City Engineer, and he's going to go through some of our proposed changes for the design standards.
Thank you. Hi, Jacob.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, Council. Jacob Sweeting, City Engineer for the record. And tonight, I'm going to actually talk briefly about two specific revisions that we are proposing to include with the latest update to the engineering design standards, which are scheduled to be published later this month. So just a brief background on what the standards are. Per the city code, all those projects that you just saw Matt present on, as well as projects by developers that are building anything out in the public right-of-way, are required to be built per the engineering, design, and construction standards. So the standards have many different parts to them. There are the construction standards, which actually have already been published this year. They include a reference to the state standard plans and specifications, as well as the city's own special provisions, we call them, which are a set of specialized instructions on how to build these things. Then there's actually the design standards, which we're going to be referencing tonight, which include the engineering design standards, and then the surface water management manual, the SWIM as we call it, which is actually what dictates the stormwater management facilities throughout the city and references the Department of Ecology manual. So the engineering design standards manual are what we publish and maintain. Actually, I'll go to the highway access management. That is a general reference guide for highways designed throughout the state as well, which is another piece of those standards. So moving on to the engineering design standards. So it's a book of standards that we develop and publish. We typically update them once a year, sometimes less frequently, sometimes more. Per the city code, any of those standards that have broad citywide implications or have potential policy, significant policy implications, we come and discuss with you all to get some input and feedback, and that's why we're here tonight. Other changes that we have, minor design standard changes and whatnot, we typically make and publish, like I said, on an annual basis. So the two specific items that I wanted to discuss with you tonight, the first is related to the downtown sidewalk design standards. These design standards were originally adopted by the City Council in 2007. They are responsible for a lot of what you see in the downtown area when you see street trees and grates. You see the bulb outs with the brick patterns that you referenced over there on 4th Street. You see the concrete sidewalks. Some other items include the street lighting is different than elsewhere. It's the black decorative lightings as well as the traffic signals. So these are all elements of those downtown design standards that are relevant in our downtown urban center or duck zone. The downtown street trees are currently placed in grates. So the grates they cover the tree well. And when they first are installed, they look great. They're intended to be a decorative feature, and they provide additional walking surface, more width of the sidewalk, and that's why they originally were selected to be used. Unfortunately, what we've seen throughout the years in having these is that they tend to get knocked out of place. The trees sometimes grow and push them up and push them, and they just jar them. They'll get sometimes kicked out of place or pulled out of place by cars or people, sometimes vandalized, sometimes they just go completely missing. And it turns out, in talking with maintenance and operations folks, typically they're out replacing or repairing one of these about once a month. And the latest cost I have on this was back from 2020. At that time, it was around $1,500 just to repair or replace one of these grates. So the costs add up, and it's hard to keep up with. And so we looked for another approach, and we have tried that approach in a couple locations out on the street. And this approach was to simply remove the grate and fill it with a bark mulch. And we would be doing this, and we have done this in locations where the sidewalk adjacent to the grate does provide that adequate pedestrian path. Now, there's gonna be some locations out there where the sidewalk's too narrow and you need the grate because you need to have that extra width for the pedestrian pathway. But where there's adequate width next to it, these seem to be working well and are fairly easy to maintain. And also, removing the tree grate allows the area around the tree to be maintained better. Often there's garbage or weeds or the little tree suckers that grow up, and it's really hard to get those and maintain those with the tree grates there. So removing the grates, replacing with bark mulch is something that I am intending to update in the engineering design standards when we publish this month. Okay, so the next item, this is not specific to the downtown. This is more specific to local neighborhoods throughout the city, local residential neighborhoods. We have seen more and more people starting to install artificial turf out in the landscape strips in front of their houses. Now, right now, the engineering design standards prohibit artificial turf in the landscape strips. And the reason behind it, it's been prohibited for quite some time, and the reason it has been prohibited is that many years back, artificial turf didn't look like it did today, and it didn't have the same features it did. It was more like AstroTurf, and it had a lot of concerns associated with it as it related to durability, maintenance, aesthetics, environmental concerns, and we simply didn't want, that in the public right of way, and so it was prohibited. Fast forward to current days. We've done a lot of research, and we've seen there's been obviously some of this installed out in the right of way already, and artificial turf is available that is permeable. So from a stormwater perspective, the water's going to go through it. It looks great if you get the right kind. It's durable. It can be installed easily. It can be repaired easily, and so we're still working on the specific construction requirements and the standards associated with this, but I would like to bring this back into the realm of what is allowed and not just simply prohibit it. That doesn't mean that everyone just go out there could install this turf. You still would have to get a construction permit. You'd have to submit to the city and say this is what we propose to install. We'd have to make sure it meets those standards that we're proposing, and then once it's approved, then you could go out there and install it. And later on tonight, there is also going to be some city code that we'll be discussing. Right now, the city code does place the maintenance responsibility of landscape strips on the adjacent homeowner. And it doesn't specifically address what maintenance responsibilities would be associated with artificial turf, because artificial turf, well, it's been prohibited. So there'll be some discussion on that item later in this meeting as well. Here's just a couple more examples of the artificial turf. One thing that wouldn't change, just as an FYI, there's also prohibition in the code from putting rocks, river rocks or other type of aggregate out in the landscape strips. And I don't intend that we would propose to change that. And it's really because those rocks get kicked out into the roadway and get stuck in storm grates. They're very hard to remove. They can also get kicked out in the sidewalk. They also they're squishy and they don't present a very good walking surface if someone's trying to go from the street to their car. So that's a standard that I'm not proposing to change at this time. So the next steps, we'll discuss later ordinance 6904. Next week that will be brought to the City Council for potential adoption. And then, like I said, later this month I intend to update and publish the design standards.
Council, any questions? I have a question regarding the artificial turf. So how long before we can, are you planning to do the revision before it gets adopted?
Dr. Mayor, I need you to speak up, please.
Sorry, we have a little frog in my throat. So how long before you do your background work and we get an update from you?
The current schedule to update the revised design standards would be by the end of this month. I'm targeting February 24th. The research on the specific standards is coming along well. There's a couple more things I'd like to look into, but we are on track to publish at that time frame. I will say there's some other factors to consider. I want to make sure we have the maintenance requirements in place, so it does involve this ordinance that we'll talk about later tonight as well, to make sure we have some maintenance responsibilities associated with the artificial.
That would fall on the owner.
Yes.
Okay, right, thank you. Councilmember Robert Baggett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Jacob, do you find that any of those rock placements contribute at all to vandalism by people who are tending to be vandals?
So I don't have specific knowledge in the residential areas of those rocks being used for vandalism. I have heard of rocks being, thrown, but I don't know if it was specific to those landscape strips or where they came from. The biggest concern on why those rocks are prohibited in the design standards are because they have a tendency to come out into the sidewalk and into the street and are hard to walk.
Just wondering if any of that had led to any of the storefronts or any of the glass that had been broken out in the downtown area.
I haven't heard that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Jason, so when you bring it back to us, will you also have what it will cost the homeowners? You mentioned a permit, and then do they have to have a design that they're going to lay out in front of their home, or what are you going to require, and will you have that back to us?
Sure. So as far as coming back for a discussion, I'm not really intending to come back for another discussion. I'm going to talk a little bit later tonight about the ordinance 6904 related to the maintenance responsibilities. And the next item that you would see would be that ordinance adoption next week, potentially. But I can answer your question. So the construction permit for a homeowner would be per our current fee schedule, which I believe is in the $150 range for a construction permit. And usually when we're getting a construction permit for something like this, because right now we get them for, say, irrigation. Some people want to install irrigation out in landscape strips or somewhere else. And we would require some sort of sketch, probably a catalog cut from the manufacturer who is providing the artificial turf. If it's being done by a landscape company, we need some information about that company, make sure that they're licensed, insured, and bonded. And so really, we just want to make sure the right product's being installed by the right people that have the expertise to do so. So it's a pretty simple process, a simple permit.
So that will all be on the ordinance, correct?
The ordinance is going to address the maintenance and repair and replacement responsibilities of the adjacent property owner once it's already installed. So the requirements for the construction permit are actually already in code, because the code already says anytime you're going to construct or install anything in the right of way, you would have to get a construction permit.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Shell Rakes.
Yeah, as far as the grates go, I'm thrilled to hear that those are going away. Downtown, we've had a lot of people trip on the ones that get pushed up from the roots and stuff. Is there any landscape strips directly downtown, or are they all outside of the downtown area?
No, there are some definitely downtown, either because they're from a previous standard built before the downtown standard was in place, or they're there by deviation. In some places, like on Division Street in front of the hospital, there are utility lines directly underneath where the landscape strip is, so there's not really the ability to plant trees there without disturbing the utilities, so that there was a shrub-type landscape strip that was approved instead as a deviation to the standard.
Okay, so for the landscape strips, the property owners, are they already maintaining these spots, or is this gonna be something, a new cost to them?
No, that's already in the code.
That's already in the code. Okay.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you.
Council will now move into the agenda items for council discussion. We have 5 items on the agenda for discussion. Ordinance number 6899, an ordinance establishing the local sales and use tax rate for local revitalization financing 2023, presented by Director Thomas. Welcome, Director Thomas.
Thank you. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, and Council. I didn't prepare a presentation tonight. Primarily, this ordinance is a housekeeping ordinance that we bring every year to the council for consideration, for adoption consideration. We've been doing this this will be our 14th year. And this is our ability to levy, this year it's 0.0157% of the state's portion of the sales tax. And we use that portion to pay off some of our debt service for a downtown project that was related to the promenade improvements back in 2010. So to go back a little bit, back in 2009, the state legislature had approved a local revitalization financing program for cities, which allowed cities to identify areas within their downtown that were eligible for revitalization. Once we identified an area for revitalization, then we were able to levy a portion of the sales tax that they already levy and collect. We get to take up a portion of that, up to $250,000 a year, to then turn around and pay for any of our bond financing that we may have as it related to those revitalization projects. So we had a revitalization area that we identified. Our plan was approved by the state, and then we issued bonds in 2010, and each year since then we have been levying a percentage up to $250,000 from the state, and we use that money to pay for the financing. So the state requires every year that then the council consider this levy amount in order for us to collect up to $250,000 for the next fiscal year. So that is what this ordinance is doing, is just asking for the council's approval to take a portion of the state's sales tax to use to pay off some of our downtown bonds, some of the bonds that we use for downtown revitalization. And just to clarify, this isn't an additional tax on top of what is already a sales tax for taxpayers in Auburn. It's what the state already levies. It's part of that 10.1% in Auburn. It's the state's portion, and we're just taking a piece of the portion that they already levy. So this is not an additive tax. It's just redistribution from the state to the city.
Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Kate Baldwin.
On the 0.0157%, is that a number they give us or we give them, or where does that originate from?
That is a number that we calculate based on what we estimate the taxable sales in Auburn will be for the fiscal year, and we back into it to figure out that's what we think is going to get to our $250,000.
Okay, so that varies by year based off of forward estimating.
Our estimated taxable base, and we're pretty conservative because conservative in the standpoint of if there's going to be an economic downturn, we want to kind of underestimate what that revenue base will be, because we don't want to end the year and have only collected then $200,000, because we do rely heavily on that money to pay our principal and interest on our bonds each year.
Any other questions, Council? Councilmember Kate Baldwin.
I always like to ask for folks on the phone, what do we consider the promenade to be? So for newer residents or people who aren't familiar with that.
So it's the portion of Division Street that is just south from City Hall south. So it was some sidewalk improvements, curbing, planter boxes, street lighting, as well as I believe some sewer main relocating that took place into the street at the same time.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Council? Thank you. Next, we have ordinance number 6901, an ordinance for the site-specific dwelling units per acre to one institutional zone, presented by Assistant Director Jason Crum of Community Development.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to hand it right over to Senior Planner Dinah Reed for her first presentation to the City Council.
Good morning, good evening, Deputy Mayor, Mayor Backus, and council members. I'm Dinah Reed, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department, Planning Division. And I'd like to brief you on a zoning map change for Green River College, ordinance number 6901. My presentation starts on page 45 of your packet. On November 18th, the applicant submitted a rezone, a site-specific rezone for the parcel. It's highlighted in red here. It's a 1.7 acre parcel, and the current zoning is R5 residential, 5 dwelling units per acre, and to be rezoned to I institutional. It's located at 31715 144th Avenue Southeast in Auburn, and it's directly north of the Green River College campus, which is shown by this polygon. This is an aerial photo of roughly of the Green River College campus and the surrounding land that they have, and the parcel is in yellow there. Next slide. This slide shows that there is an existing building on the campus, on this parcel. It was used as a childcare facility for, mostly for the college. And the Green River College is interested in repurposing this building to a teaching and learning center that will be used for the instructors and professors of the campus, and also for human resources offices. The current zoning of R5 does not allow college, university, public use activities on this parcel. Therefore, they're interested in repurposing this to that use, and rezoning it to institutional would allow that use. This is a map that I'm showing of the underlying comprehensive plan designation. The blue shows that the comprehensive land designation is institutional, and the subject parcel is already in that same land use designation. The criteria for a site-specific rezone under Auburn City Code 18.68.040, you must meet at least 3 of the criteria. A, the rezone implements the policies of the comprehensive plan. This basically is just stating that the comprehensive plan designation of the site is institutional, and rezoning the parcel to institutional zoning would implement the comprehensive plan designation. Another criteria, does the rezone bear a substantial relationship to public health, safety, or welfare? It was determined that this rezoning this property and having the use of more of a college intended use will not have any adverse impacts on the surrounding area. And lastly, this is simply the rezone map amendment showing that on the left, you can see the subject parcel is presently in the R5 residential zoning district, the little square in yellow, and then once it's rezoned to institutional, it'll show gray on the rezone map, and you can see how the surrounding parcels are also zoned institutional. An open record public hearing was held on January 18th in 2023 and on January 23rd, 2023. The hearing examiner issued a written recommendation of approval with one condition. The condition of approval is related to the sequencing of city approvals. And based upon the hearing examiner's recommendation of approval, staff seeks to schedule ordinance number 6901 for city council action at the regular meeting on February 21st, 2023.
Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Larry Brown.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. The college has made a decision that that property could be better used for their purposes by rezoning and prohibiting childcare in that place, or maybe better stated, the uses that they desire with this institutional designation zoning. I'm just curious, are they going to be engaged in childcare activities near the campus? Or is that they're just not doing that anymore?
Well, the existing building hasn't been used as a child care center for 2 to 3 years now. That's according to the applicant. That use ceased to exist. I guess it wasn't needed in that particular facility. And the reason why they feel that the building can be better used for a teaching and learning center for professors and instructors and some office staff. And in order to do that use, they need to rezone the property to institutional because that particular use is not allowed in the R5 residential. I don't know if there's childcare being offered elsewhere on campus.
Yeah, I know that's not really the subject
Yeah.
here, but I was just curious. Thanks.
Any other questions, council? Thank you very much, Diane.
Dinah.
I know.
Okay.
Council, we're going into the next ordinance is 6093, an ordinance amending chapter 2.94 of the Auburn City Code related to city's transportation advisory board, presented by Director Gal.
Yes, and I'm gonna pass
Cecile
this one
Malik.
over to Cecile Malik, who is our senior transportation planner, and she's gonna go through with you the amendments that we're proposing.
Welcome, Cecile.
Thank you. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, Council members. So I'm here this evening to talk to you about the proposed ordinance 6903, which is an ordinance to update or to amend the chapter 294 of the Auburn City Code, which regulates the Auburn Transportation Advisory Board. So to give you a little bit of background, the Auburn Transportation Advisory Board is a community advisory body which was created in 2015, and its role is to review and discuss and provide advice on transportation-related topics such as policies, issues, projects, programs. So the board is composed of 15 positions to represent the diverse community members and interests and transportation users in the city. The members are typically appointed for a 3-year term and they meet quarterly. So the purpose of this proposed amendment, in a nutshell, is to ensure that the board has a full representation of the Auburn community, and that we make sure that we have a good representation. We also wanted to include some language that aligns with the city's DEI goals. We wanted to clarify the role of the TAD in transportation issues that they review. And also, we wanted to provide some general language update for better clarity. So in the appointment section of the code, we're proposing to do some changes in the member group. So each position in the tab has kind of a group assigned. So we have some groups that represent some business partners or community partners, such as the Green River College, the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, the Auburn Downtown Cooperative, and such. And then we also have groups that represent the different transportation users, such as transit riders, cyclists, or other general residents. So one of the cleanup or update we wanted to do was to remove the term citizen because it tends to feel alienating to people who are not national citizens, even though that's not the full meaning of the term. But just to make it more welcoming, I guess, to just take that term out. And so, for example, we have a group that was named Citizen at Large. We're proposing to change it to a more general term of transportation users. And then same for the senior citizens. We wanted to change it to senior residents and also add an age specification because we've had questions and because we didn't have an age specification and people say, how old do I need to be to represent this group? So now we have an age. And then the group, there was a group, the full name was the Americans with Disabilities Act ADA Accessibility Advisory Group, which is a mouthful. So we're proposing to change it to persons living with disabilities. Another change in the appointment is that the general trust outside of the business and community partners representation groups, we had different numbers of positions for each group. So most groups had only one position. The local businesses had two, and the citizen at large had three positions, which was very restricting in the way that people could apply to represent these groups. So we are changing this so that there is a little more flexibility to have more than one representative in those groups, as long as there's at least one representative in each group, which will make it easier to fill positions and also for people who want to represent a group to be able to participate. So the proposed amendment that is in your packet, and I forgot to tell you the amendment, the ordinance starts on page 68 of your packet. Sorry about that. So this ordinance and the proposed update was discussed with the Transportation Advisory Board on September 13, 2022, and again on December 13, 2022. Which resulted in a recommendation from the board to council in support of adoption of this update. There was one minor change that staff is proposing following that recommendation is to change the disabled persons to persons living with disabilities. So the version that the board recommended had the term disabled persons, but then we found out that the more appropriate term and a better term to use was persons living with disabilities. So we're proposing to add that term. We don't expect that will be an issue. So the next step is for council to take action on Ordinance 6903 at the next council meeting on February 21st.
Council, do you have any questions of Cecile Mullet? Thank you, Cecile.
Thank you.
Council, the next one is ordinance number 6094, an ordinance amending chapter 12.12 of the Auburn City Code relating to public sidewalk areas to address artificial turf presented by Director Gao. Yes, Jacob Sweeting is coming back again.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Once again, Jacob Sweeting, City Engineer, and as promised, we have an opportunity to discuss Ordinance 6904, which starts on page 74 of your packet. And I don't have a presentation for this one. I'm hoping it should be a pretty straightforward and simple conversation. So Chapter 1212 of the Auburn City Code establishes the maintenance responsibility of public sidewalks. The public sidewalks are defined as the area between the curb and the property line. So that often includes landscape strips, sidewalk, and even some areas behind the sidewalk. So currently the code does not address anything to do with artificial turf that might be in landscape strips for the reasons that we previously discussed, which is that they are not currently allowed. So the proposed code amendments with this ordinance would first of all assign the responsibility to maintain, repair, and replace any artificial turf that's placed in the landscape strip with the adjacent abutting property owner. And that the condition of that will be such that it will be free of holes, tears, rippling, and some of the other things that might cause issues out there. As far as what happens if the city needs to go out there and, say, dig up a water service, or if Comcast needs to go out there and install a new service line, the code establishes a requirement that there will be a 3 days notice provided to the property owner, at which time the property owner has the responsibility to remove the turf so that the work can be done. And then once the work is done, the person doing the work has the responsibility to notify the property owner. The property owner then has 3 days to put the turf back. Now, if the property owner fails to remove the turf, the work still needs to be done, and whoever's doing that work would remove the turf and place it on the abutting property, and then the property owner would have to reset that turf. So some pretty simple terms there. One other situation that might arise is that there could be an emergency in a situation where there's just not time to give that 3 days notice, in which case the code does give the right to go out there and do the work and set the turf aside and have the property owner replace it.
Okay. Council member, do you have any questions? Council member Cheryl Rakes?
With the turf, what are the standards gonna be? I mean, they can't just like put any color of turf they want down, or, I mean, how are you gonna mandate exactly what they can use?
Sure. So definitely it's going to be a green grass, natural grass appearing turf. It's going to be of a high quality. We're doing some research on the different types of materials. There's a few different types of materials are out there. We're trying to choose some that are readily available as well as are environmentally friendly. A big question is about the ballast material. So ballast material is what holds down the turf and keeps it from rippling. You'll see in the ball fields that you have the little black pellets. So we're not going to allow the little black pellets because those have a tendency to get kicked out and have their own issues. So usually it's a quartz silicon like sand material that is used as an environmentally friendly option that will hold down the material. And then we're also looking at requiring some seaming or some pins to hold it down from and keeping it in place. But yes, there'll be some standard to try to make it look as natural, naturally as good, healthy sod as possible.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, Jacob. Okay, next we have a resolution, number 5698, a resolution authorizing transfer of funds for the purpose of making loans from the general fund and/or cumulative reserve funds sustained by grants, fees, tax credits between February 2023 and February 2026, presented by our Director Thomas again.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, and Council again. Another housekeeping item. This is not something that we bring every year. This is actually an extension of a resolution that was last seen and adopted by the council in February of 2020. That resolution was 5498. And what this does is grants the finance department the authority to transfer money from either the general fund or the cumulative reserve fund to another fund that is awaiting reimbursement of some sort. So it's for cash flow purposes. So if we have a timing difference between when we spent the money and when we're waiting to get that money back, generally through grants, this gives us for any fund that has grants, fees, or other sort of reimbursement type revenue, but it's that waiting time, waiting to get that revenue reimbursement back. So typically, our financial policies don't allow us to move money from fund to fund unless we have specific budget authority by the council. Since we don't anticipate needing this in the next 3 years, we haven't presented to the council and asked for that authority to make any specific transfer. This just gives us that authority, kind of in a last minute sort of situation, to transfer the money for cash flow purposes. The money would then immediately be transferred back to either the cumulative reserve fund or the general fund, which once that fund has received their reimbursement from the granting agency. We do have limits that the transfer wouldn't exceed $2.5 million, and that this isn't a loan that would be interest bearing. So this isn't because a utilities fund needs some additional financing, so we would be using money from the general fund to support that. And in any way, this would just be simply a short-term cash flow situation. And for historical context, we've had the resolution 5498 was in place for the last 3 years. We have not needed to take advantage of this resolution at all in the last 3 years. So don't anticipate that all of our funds actually have pretty healthy fund balances, so they can absorb a little bit of that timing difference as is. Don't anticipate needing it in the next 3 years. It's just one of those safety net items, just in case.
Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Larry Brown.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Is there a provision to circle back to the council for informing us of that occurring?
There isn't currently a provision for that. I could make it a provision as part of the quarterly reports. If something like that happens, that would pop up in just the in our quarterly reporting. If you see a fund balance that's been supplemented with a transfer, I could easily make that as part of my quarterly presentation if that is something that the council would be interested in.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kate Baldwin.
I was gonna say thank you to Councilmember Brown because that was the one call out that I had as far as an action against this plan is it makes sense, it seems logical. You already answered the question for how many times did we use it before, which is none, which is great. But I would ask to include some type of notification requirement when that fund transfers occur.
Any other questions, Council? If not, thank you, Director Thomas. Council, we will now move into the municipal council discussion. We have 2 items on the agenda for discussion. Ordinance number 6889, an ordinance amending section 2.03.020 of the Auburn City Code related to the salary and employment benefits of the city mayor position, presented by Director Martinson.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. I'm Candace Martinson, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, and I have a presentation on Ordinance 6889 and 6890. So the intent of these ordinances is to remove the illegal provisions that were existing in City Code prior to January 1 of 2018. That is removing a no use of sick leave incentive day that went away with the passage of the Washington Paid Sick Leave Law. And our city practice has ended as of January 2018 when that went into effect. However, we are requesting that the council consider the city code cleanup to reflect this new practice. So an overview of the preparation and presentation of these ordinances thus far. HR consulted with legal to prepare these ordinances for removal of the illegal provision, and that there were additional changes that legal recommended to clean up, and I will go over those in greater detail. HR presented these additional recommended changes to council at the November 28th, 2022 study session. And then those ordinances moved forward for council action on December 19th, 2022. Council made a motion to table those ordinances to the January 9th, 2023 study session, and unfortunately that study session was canceled. So these ordinances have moved forward for the municipal services focus area for tonight. Additionally, there was a council motion for an ad hoc committee at the February 6th council meeting. But that motion did not remove this item for this municipal services focus area, so I will do a brief presentation to go through that. So as a result of the council's February 6th action to create this ad hoc committee, there are staff recommendations and forthcoming tonight that remove the illegal provision of the current city code that we recommend be corrected. But the ad hoc committee recommendations will be addressed upon the conclusion of their discussions. And so the scope of that would be to review the benefits and leave compensation for the mayor position, work with staff to gather both historic and comparative data, evaluate the current ordinance, establish the appropriate legal span of control, develop options for revisiting the existing ordinance language, and present those findings back to council in a study session when next steps are determined by council. So the staff recommendations for the presentation this evening is to request for council to approve 6889 and 6890 to remove the illegal provisions of the code and provide for the additional legal department's recommendations. So specifically to Ordinance 6889, this is the employee personnel section of the Auburn City Code, and there were previously enacted provisions that applied to the mayor position that is an elected official that we're requesting move to the mayor section of the city code. So employee section is 2.63 and the mayor section is 2.03. Ordinance 6889 does not add, revise, or remove existing benefits for the mayor. It's just a move of status quo language to the appropriate section of the code. And just for reference, the existing language origin is Ordinance 4109 for vacation, and that was enacted in 1986. Ordinance 6489 for sick leave, enacted in 2013. And then Mayor Backus was appointed as mayor in January of 2014. So Ordinance 6890 is compliance with our state law. So we have removed all of the additional benefits that are not required by state law for employees. We've moved those to city personnel policies or collective bargaining agreements. And the reason for that being is wages, hours, and working conditions are a mandatory subject of bargaining. So the city has about 50% of our unionized staff that are represented by collective bargaining agreements that are already executed. So the intent and the language cleanup that we worked up with the legal department is the benefits that are leave benefits that are provided to employees by legal action from the state. So everything else would then move from this section of the code into a collective bargaining agreement or city policy, and only state mandated leave benefits would remain in the personnel section of the code. So that's a brief overview for all of you.
Council, do you have any questions? I guess not.
Okay.
Well, have a good evening.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Before I adjourn the meeting, I have a very quick announcement. And that announcement is I've requested Councilman Mulenga to join me as Vice Chair on the Municipal Services Committee. Our newly appointed Councilmember Rakes will be Vice Chair on two committees with Councilmember Trout-Manuel on Health and Human Services and Councilmember Brown on Public Works. With that, Council, we have come to the end of our study session, and this meeting is now adjourned.